Hi, I'm Gail Sokol and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to make a ganache-filled almond flour coffee cake. And it's a yeasted coffee cake, so we have to make a yeast dough first. Super easy, so don't get intimidated. It's really easy. Anybody can do this. And not only is it beautiful, this coffee cake, it has almond flour in it, and it looks like a flour. So I just have this little double entendre. So we're going to get started and make the dough. So in our electric mixer, we're going to take 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and we're going to just get that in there. I have 1/4 cup of almond flour. It's going to give it some good flavor. I have 1/4 cup of non-fat dry milk. And you might be asking, why am I using non-fat dry milk? Well, milk in general is an enriched product that will actually give tenderness to our yeast dough. And that's what's going to make our coffee cake so delicious. So we're going to add 1/4 cup of this. This also lasts a lot longer on your shelf. You can keep non-fat dry milk for like a year on the shelf. So it's very shelf stable. And I'm not suggesting that you drink it or replace milk, your regular milk with it, but it's great for baking. And there's an enzyme, just something on the side, a little learning tip. There is an enzyme in milk known as glutathione, and it can actually affect your gluten formation, what helps your dough to rise and catch those carbon dioxide gas bubbles through the fermentation process. So this actually, the drying process of this milk actually destroys that bad, nasty glutathione. So it's good. That's why a lot of your yeast bread recipes have milk that's warmed. That's non-fat dry milk. That it's not non-fat dry milk, but it's warmed up, and that's so you destroy that glutathione. This is already destroyed, so it's perfect. 2½ tablespoons of granulated sugar. So now we're going to add 2 teaspoons, and this is instant active yeast or fast rising yeast. You add that right to your dry ingredients. Super easy to use. You don't have to proof it like you do with just active dry yeast. So look for fast rising. It's really neat. And 3/4 of a teaspoon of table salt. Okay. I'm going to take my whisk and I'm going to whisk all those dry ingredients together. I really want that yeast homogeneously blended along with the other ingredients. So we really want to make sure everything gets really well mixed together before we continue. Very, very important. Okay, just give it a good mix with the whisk. It's not enough to do it with the paddle. All right, so now we're going to put our paddle attachment on our bowl, and I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of softened butter. I'm just going to get that right in there. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, pure vanilla extract, and 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract. There's our almond flavor coming in. And then I have 3/4 cup of 110-degree water, nice warm water. If you don't have a thermometer, don't worry about it. What you can do is just put your finger in it. If you could take a bath in it, it's fine. That's how I go by it. And you're just going to blend everything together on low speed. And you'll see it smells wonderful. You can smell the almond extract and the vanilla extract. And wait till everything sort of comes together into a dough. And it's going to be a weird feeling dough. It may be like something you've never felt before. It's almost silky. It really feels silky. So when you have just a few crumbs on the bottom, I stop. Okay, I stop. And I'm going to clean off my paddle. And I usually just do this with my hands. Get your hands in it so you can actually feel your dough. Much better way to bake than just using a spoon all the time or a spatula. Much better. And I'm going to gather my ingredients. And you notice sometimes there's a little bit of dry ingredients on the bottom of an electric mixing bowl. I'm just going to gather them around, and I'm just going to sort of give my dough a little bit of a kneading, sort of show it what's what for maybe a few seconds, not that long. This is a little different than most yeasted doughs that you've made. If you've made like a pizza dough, or you've made a French bread, or any other type of dough that doesn't use milk or sugar. This is known as a rich dough. A rich sweet dough. and it actually feels silky, and you can almost see the shine from the butter. So now we're going to take this beautiful dough, and we're going to come over here to a bowl where I have actually greased it with nonstick cooking spray. So I've just sprayed around it. If you don't like nonstick, use a little oil, just a little, or a little butter. And I'm just going to put my dough in there. I'm going to flip it over. If you notice, I'm doing that so the greased side is up. It won't dry out this way. And now we have to give it a rest. We want to allow fermentation to occur, where the yeast is going to eat the sugar in that dough and actually give off beautiful carbon dioxide bubbles, and they're going to get stuck in that gluten, the protein network that this wheat flour, our all-purpose flour, makes, and it's going to allow our beautiful rich yeast dough to rise. So I'm going to put this in a nice warm spot for about an hour. So while our dough is rising, remember it has about an hour, we can make our filling and our streusel topping. So let's start with our ganache fillings. We wanted to let it cool a little bit. So I have a small saucepan, and I'm going to turn on the heat and put in half a cup of heavy cream. This is not something you want to walk away from. You want to stay here and stay with it. You want it to come to a simmer just where you see little bubbles around the edges. Sometimes I let it go a little further so it's actually boiling, and then I immediately stop the cooking process and take it off the heat. And then you want to put in 1 cup of high quality chocolate chips, whether they're bittersweet or semi-sweet. Really good flavor. So we're just going to give this a minute to heat up. And it doesn't take long. Again, you're looking for the bubbles around the edges. And you want to use heavy cream because that's what ganache is. It's basically a concoction of heavy cream. See, it's already starting. Heavy cream, chocolate, and sometimes you can add other things like butter or sugar or even liqueurs. I've even added caramel. But right now, we're making it simple. You can see the bubbles around there? All right, so I'm going to shut it off. I'm going to actually shut this off, but I want you to see how it's really bubbling and it's really coming to a boil. And at this point, it will bubble over, so don't walk away. You're going to add your 1 cup of chips. Okay. And you're just going to allow this to melt. So we're just going to stir this. Stir it gently because otherwise it can sort of fly back at you. And just let the whisk gently do its thing where it's combining the hot cream and allowing that chocolate to melt. And if you use a really high quality chocolate, there's cocoa butter in there. And that's the fat of the chocolate. That's what makes it so silky, so rich, and so beautiful in its flavor and its look. Notice that the chocolate is melting instantaneously, really. Make sure you go into the corners of your pot. And we may not use all this filling, but it's a very, very good thing to have in a airtight container in your freezer at all times. A little ganache. It's not such a bad thing because then you can take it out, microwave it, serve it over ice cream, or if you're having company coming, you can serve it with brownies or over a chocolate cake. It can be used as a frosting for chocolate cake. And if you have a little more chocolate and a little less cream ratio, you can actually make truffles. And we'll be doing that in one of my videos coming up. So see how beautiful? Look how gorgeous it is. Oh, it sort of looks like a chocolate river in there. And you want to make sure you're getting into all the edges. Really, really get in there with your whisk. If you don't have a whisk, you can use a spoon, but a whisk is actually a little bit better. So see how I've whisked it up? If you whisk too fast and too much, you'll actually beat your ganache, and you don't want to do that. You'll end up with little bubbles, and you really don't want to do that. So just look at that. It's mesmerizing, isn't it? It's beautiful. Now I'm going to take it off the heat. It's already been off the heat, but I'm going to actually take it out of the pot, which is hot, and I'm going to pour it into a bowl. And we're going to let it cool a little bit because we don't want to melt our dough when we're filling it. And there you have it. So we just made our ganache. We're allowing it to cool. And now we're going to make our streusel topping. And this just goes into the center of our flour coffee cake. So we're going to take 2 tablespoons of light brown sugar. If you like dark brown sugar, go ahead and use it. I like light brown sugar for this, but that's fine. 1 tablespoon each of almond flour and coarsely chopped almonds. They can be salted or not salted, your choice. And I just sort of mix this up with my fingers. And then I'm going to add 2.5 teaspoons of unsalted, very softened butter. And I'm going to make a streusel topping just with my fingers. I'm just going to allow it to get crumbly. Notice I'm just crumbling it with this motion of my fingers, almost like you're making a chicken mouth. Very easy to do. If you want to do it with a fork and knife, you can, but get your hands in your dough and in your baking. You can actually feel when things are ready and the consistency of what they should be when they're ready to go. So you can see these are little clumps. Really beautiful, right? Really nice. It's going to go real nice in our center of our coffee cake. And now I'm just going to let this chill in the refrigerator until we're ready to use it. Our dough has risen, so it's risen for about an hour, and I'm going to uncover it. You can actually see it looks a little steamy in there from the carbon dioxide because not only the carbon dioxide has helped it rise, but it's warm in there because the yeast is really a single-celled living organism, and it actually produces heat. So it actually feels nice and toasty in there. So I'm going to take my dough out, and I'm going to divide it. Try not to use any flour. Again, try not to use any flour because you will get a dry coffee cake. And I'm just going to make it into a log. I'm going to cut it in half with my bench scraper or my dough cutter, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing. I'm going to cut it into fourths. And I'm going to put 3 of those pieces back in the bowl. All right. And 1 piece I'm going to work with at a time. I'm going to try to get a circle. And we want our goal, all right? The end goal is to get a 10-inch diameter circle. Now again, this dough, you can see there's butter on my hands because it's this silky, beautiful yeasted dough. It looks like I'm never going to get a 10-inch diameter circle, but I will. You just got to work it. You don't want to have any strange shapes, so try to roll from all different directions. And if you feel like you want to pick it up very slowly. This type of dough, you can do it. Nothing's going to happen. And just keep working it until you get a 10-inch diameter circle. And this is 10 inches in diameter. So that's what we're working towards. So keep going. Takes a little time. You'll work those biceps. And don't let it get so thin that it rips. But if you pick it up like this and just flip it over, be very, very gentle and don't stretch the dough because you'll break that gluten. You'll rip it, and we don't want to rip the gluten. So the goal is to get a 10-inch circle. And give yourself some time to do this. This is not the fun part yet. Wait till we get to the fun part. Now let's see if we're almost there. Almost there. I'm just going to do a little bit more. Where I can. It is, yes, it's getting thin. You're probably thinking, does she realize it's getting so thin? It's very thin. I know it. And that's good. That's what we want. All right. So when we get to 10 inches, I've done it. You're going to have just a little overlap, a little bit of excess dough. You're going to take a small sharp knife and just go all the way around. All right. And you can use whatever you want, a bowl, whatever's 10 inches in diameter. If you want to make a 9-inch one, that's fine too. But 10 inches works really well. Just take off the little excess dough. And sometimes I will add this dough to the next piece, just so I have a little more to work with. And sometimes I take this dough and actually fill it with ganache and make a little tiny sort of a mini coffee cake. Now, I have a pizza pan with parchment paper ready to go. So I'm very gently, you're going to do this with 2 hands, I'm just going to move it over. All right, and I'm just going to set it down on this pizza pan. And you do, the first piece is always the hardest because you have to guide it back into that round shape. All right, we're good. We're good, we're good. And a pizza pan is easiest. You can use a sheet pan, it'll work fine. 10 inches will work on a standard sheet pan. Now I'm gonna take our lovely ganache that's been cooling, and you want a heaping tablespoon, no more, no more. See, I love ganache so much. Some of my coffee cakes, I've used way too much ganache. And what happens is it ends up oozing out of the layers of flour, of the petals, and you don't want that. So you're gonna take an offset spatula, that's your rounded tip, kinked on the edges there, so on one side or both sides, it's just sort of bent, and it will help you get around. And then you're just gonna smear it around, all right? Smear it and hold on, it's gonna be a little awkward. It's gonna be a little awkward, but you wanna smear it all over, right to the edges. All right, and give yourself time to do it. If you see that the ganache is getting on this side like that, just go back to your bowl, and that's what's so nice about this. You can actually just get whatever just fell over the edges and get it back on the right side and get it back on your layer of dough, and then start smearing again. You want to do it as evenly as possible. And again, it's sort of like spackling a wall. Try not to rip your dough. I almost did by accident, but see how I'm just spreading it? And it is thin. It's going to be thin. Don't worry. There is a method to my madness, you'll see. All the way to the edges. All right. I'm just going to take a little teeny bit more and just get into there. Sometimes you might need just a touch more. All right, put your spatula down, and now we're going to do the second piece of dough. Now you notice that I had this little excess. Sometimes I just stick it under the dough and use it as excess dough just to help, so we don't get what happened the first time. We ended up with a really thin piece of dough, which is fine, but this will give a little bit more leeway. So we'll have a little bit more to go. Let's put your knife on the side and keep rolling it. Again, I do the same thing I did with the first one. It's very silky, it's very soft dough, but it holds together beautifully, holds together very nicely. We're almost at 10 inches, because I can sense it. You can see it, it's growing really big. Okay, and those little dots in there, that's from the almond flour. This ground up almonds, that's what almond flour is, but it just has such a nice flavor. There's no gluten in almond flour, but so it actually tenderizes this coffee cake. Again, we take our 10-inch template or whatever we want to use to get 10 inches, whether it's the bottom of a bowl or a bowl upside down, whatever you want to do. I'm going to take that off. Take off your excess dough. See, we had a lot more excess because we had a bigger piece of dough. And now we're going to transfer. And you're going to do this very carefully. Don't use a rolling pin. You know how people do that with a pie crust? Don't do that. May not work here. And you're just going to gently put it down. And if it doesn't go down completely, you can make it work. Just sort of slide it. So you have that ganache on the bottom, and that ganache will help you slide it. Look how pretty that looks, right? Another 1 tablespoon, heaping tablespoon of ganache. Get that ready to go. And put it on there. All right. See, I didn't empty that spoon of ganache. That's why we needed a little extra. And start smearing again, but hold on to this parchment paper because it will slide around. But you see what I'm doing? We're building layers. Dough, ganache. And we're only going to do this with 3 of the dough pieces. The fourth one we're going to leave plain. And then the fun starts. All right, so I still have ganache here. I'm going to wipe it down from my bowl. And that way I can drag a little bit more over my dough. Rotate your pan. All right, rotate it. And you really do want these two circles aligned. If they're not, your flour will not come out as pretty as it should. Just treat your dough very gently and it will work. It will work. And it's important to actually spread to the edge because you want those petals to be, you'll see they get almost striped. All right, so here we go. Third dough, third piece of dough, right? I'm taking my scrap, sticking it in there. And I wouldn't recommend that with most doughs to do that, but this dough is very forgiving because of the butter and the non-fat dry milk. It's so tender. And notice I didn't use 1 iota of flour. Did anyone notice that? No flour. And you're probably flouring. I used to do a lot of flouring of my work surface, and I ended up with very dry baked goods. If you don't have to flour, don't do it. There are times when you do, but here you don't have to. Just pick it up very gently and flip it over. But it's such a smooth and silky dough. It sort of reminds me of a brioche dough, which is full of butter. This only has 4 tablespoons. This is like a modified sweet, rich dough. It's not that sweet and rich, but it's enough. Believe me, it will satisfy. All right, so let's see if we're there. We are. Cut around again. We're almost 3/4 the way done. Remove your excess. There we go. Remove your stencil, and here we go. We're going to go real careful. Here we go. And we're going to put that over. And again, if you can't get it perfectly, just sort of slide it, slide it, slide it. Because once it sticks to that ganache, it's on there. All right. Again, ganache gets on everything. Everything, including the chef. Heaping tablespoon. Clean off that spoon so you get a lot of it off of there. And start smearing. Now, sometimes if you have too much, you'll notice your ganache layers will start smearing and sliding, and you don't want that. So that's how you know we don't have enough now, because they're really not doing that. Slide it around. I have a lot of ganache on there, so I'm going to take that off and pick that up. Go right over the edges. This takes a little time, but what you save when you make the dough, it's such an easy dough to make. It really is no trouble when you make this. I can make 2 or 3 of these in a day. And it's really not that much of an effort because it only rises barely an hour. Okay, you ready for the last dough? Last one. We're going to take our scraps, put them in there. Roll it out. No flour. Keep it going. And again, when you roll a few times one direction, that's when you see it's getting thin. Rotate it. Pick it up and rotate it. Okay. Easy to do. We're almost there. Now, if I have any scraps here, I probably would bake it off. Make it like a little mini coffee cake. Or even fill it in a little pan or on a sheet pan with a little ganache inside. That's what I did. That's what I did the other day. It's delicious. Okay, let's see if we're there. 10 inches, we are there. Cut around. Remember, this one we don't ganache. We're going to put it on top, but we don't ganache it. We're going to start having some fun. All right, this is the fun part for me. So we're going to put this down. Okay, so you want to get this piece gently over. Okay, slide it, slide it, slide it. Don't pick it up, try to slide it. Picking it up won't work. Remember, it's been ganached. All right, so you see that? Doesn't look like much of anything, does it? Just wait. Get a small, sharp knife and make sure it doesn't have any dough on it. This did. And before you do anything to it, get a 2.5 inch, I just have like a ramekin of some sort, and you're going to put it right in the middle. Just leave it in the middle. Could be a glass, it could be a tiny little bowl, whatever you have, 2.5 inches or so. And you're going to make cuts. You're going to hold on to the parchment and you're going to make very symmetrical cuts. Watch what I'm doing. I made one cut. I'm going to twist it around the opposite direction, 180 degrees. I'm going to make another cut. I'm going to make another cut in quarters, almost like you're cutting a pie, all right? Almost like you're cutting a pie into wedges. We want 16 equal pieces. So I have quarters. Now I'm going to cut them into eighths. Okay. Eighths, so they look pretty symmetrical and pretty even. Now we're going to cut into 16ths. And if your parchment moves a little, move it so it's more even into the pizza pan. Okay, keep it going. Cut very carefully, but make sure you cut through. You've got to cut through. So make sure that knife is sharp. This is one of my sharpest knives. If it's not sharp, sharpen it. Make sure it's super sharp. It's got to cut right through. So we're almost there. 16 pieces is what we want. I think I have one more to go. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, right? So this one's a little thicker than the others. Forgot to cut that one. And we're at 16, right? Now put the knife down and you're going to come back, take this off, all right? And you're going to take 2 adjacent pieces. See those beautiful layers of ganache and dough in there? Isn't that beautiful? And you're going to twist them a couple of times, all right? Without ripping your dough, very gently, two or three times. Just decide which one you're going to do and do the same, and then pinch at the end. Pinch. That's your flour petal. That's our flour, okay? And then rotate. And you're going to take 2 more. And you're going to twist one way and one the other way. And keep going. And keep going. And then you're going to twist and pinch. Pinch. Now, sometimes my coffee cake, because of the ganache, the pinches open up a little bit. But it looks like a chrysanthemum or something. You know, like a chocolatey chrysanthemum. It looks really, really good. So it doesn't bother me. So that was 3 times. And you can see the little stripes of ganache? It's just so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. Keep going. I know my parchment's getting messy, but I don't care. Keep going. Once, twice, 3 times, and pinch, and pinch, pinch, pinch. Keep doing it. It is so much fun to do this because you see it happening right before your eyes. You don't have to wait. You just say, oh my gosh, I see what that's going to look like. And that is so cool. So cool. All right, 3rd, and then pinch. Look at those layers. Look at those layers, the beautiful dough and the ganache. It's just gorgeous. It's a beautiful thing to look at. 2, going on 3. All right. Okay, now last petals. Twist away, away. 3rd time, pinch. Isn't that beautiful? Look at those flowers. Look at those petals. All right, I'm going to pinch them so maybe they'll stay shut this time. Now, I took my chilled streusel, and that's going to be the center of our flour. So we're going to put it right in the center. All right, it's got all those chopped nuts, and I've preheated my oven already to 400 degrees. 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and this just bakes for 14 to 16 minutes. That's it. So I am going to go wash my hands, put this baby in the oven, and we'll see what it looks like when it comes out. So my ganache-filled almond flour coffee cake came out of the oven. It's cooled slightly, and it's lovely. I feel like I'm amongst many flowers in the garden. I ended up baking a third one because I made an extra dough, and it's right here. And I got a little lazy, but it's so pretty. You got to see what I did. So instead of taking the 2 strips of the 16 and starting to fold away from each other, I made 16 strips and just folded them and twisted them individually. So it looks like a beautiful, like wild looking flower. It's lovely. So this one's cooled enough. So I like to powder it with a little sugar, and this is confectionery sugar. So you can get a little sieve and just sort of dust away, go around. I don't like to do the center because I like to make it a little different. You know, the almondy center should be a little bit different for the flour. So you just go around and dust it as much or as little as you want. And then you can transfer it to a serving platter. And this is good to go for a dessert, a brunch, anything you want. And it freezes beautifully as well, as long as you wrap it airtight. So that's the video. That's the recipe. I hope you've enjoyed today's recipe. I've so much enjoyed sharing it with you. I think we had a lot of fun. For more recipes and videos, go to my website, gailsokol.com. Until next time.